Hey, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior shine in its light. Today, I have the pleasure of a good dear friend of mine, Angie Evans Sly. Um, Angie is a successful entrepreneur and realtor. She's been in direct sales for over 20 years and just a joy and a light. And I am so honored that she said yes to coming on and sharing her story. Before we get started, Angie, I do want to apologize to you and the audience. I am traveling today, so I'm sitting outside at a cafe. So I've got road noise, car noise, vacuum noise. So it's not as polished and professional, but hey, we pivot and we go, right?
Right on. And that sofa behind you looks perfect.
Yeah, that's I take this with me wherever I travel. Put it on my car like the Clampets and
Yeah,
head on down the road,
it's a great message.
Me and Granny sit on the top and away we go. Uh,
I love it.
So I appreciate you joining me today. Angie, you and I grew up in the same little town. You were a year behind me, and so I've gotten to know you pretty well over the years. I've always found you to be such a joy and a light and an inspiration. But I know that you didn't you had every reason not to be joy and
Mm,
light, but you chose to be joy and light. Can you kind of jump us in the middle of that growing up in a small town Iowa and some of the things
yeah.
you overcame and can share with my audience how you got to be so freaking awesome.
Yeah. You're so funny. I love it. And thank you. It's an honor to be with you because I just adore you. And I'm probably gonna cry. I'm an emotional being, but so growing up in Clear Lake, I absolutely loved my experience there. My siblings, um, one of my siblings in particular talks about it not being so great. And I absolutely loved every bit of it, the small town thing. My dad died in the line of duty fighting a fire in Clear Lake. And that was, of course, like life shattering
And how old
as
were you
it
at the
was.
time?
I was a senior in high school. So was my sister. My brother was in college. And I'll tell you, you know what the power and love of a small town when stuff like that happens.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And your
we
dad was a
were
good man because he helped run the skating rink for a long time, and it was where all of us kids grew up and knew him, and and then being a firefighter, he was a great man.
Yeah, he was fun. I don't remember him being at the skating rink, but he did all of those. He announced the football games and basketball games. He and the Mad Hatter headed up the first Buddy Holly tribute in Clear Lake,
Yeah.
whatever, a million years ago. So that community just really just in fact, I think my mom still gets an invite every year to the Christmas party for the fire department,
Oh wow.
even though none of those people even know, our family now. So we continue to go back there. We have a little place there and it's a huge blessing. But yeah, about you figure out what small town is. We can all complain about everybody knowing your business, but
Yeah.
wow, that little community built us big time. And we weren't a family. I would say that I moved there in third grade, and prior to third grade, my dad was in sales all his life, and he sold dental products before we got to Clear Lake, and he was uber successful. I just remember my parents going on these trips that they earned, and by the time we got to Clear Lake, he was in a bit of a transition, and I talked very openly about being the kids that got the free lunch tickets. Like we were that kid. My dad would go to the fire department meetings and everybody would send the leftovers home with him. We didn't go new school clothes shopping. We got, socks and underwear and maybe a shirt.
Yep.
And the coolest thing about that is that nobody knew. I
Yeah.
mean, probably everybody knew, but nobody cared. They just met
Right.
us where we were.
Yeah.
And I just remember later as an adult talking back, about talking with people about, like free lunch tickets and like nobody knew,
Yeah.
which is kind of cool because I felt like the kid carrying the orange ticket that was free
Yep.
compared to the blue tickets that weren't, it's just so weird.
I felt that way too. It's amazing. We don't know that we're quote unquote poor when our family and friends don't treat us as poor. Now,
Yeah.
the downside to small town is that there are, the uppity elite that do make it well known that you're not. But when you pull back their hood, they're just as messy as the rest of us. And, they're fighting their own battles. So, I think small town living is whatever you choose to make of it.
Without a doubt.
And losing your father, especially in your senior year, and I know dads and daughters, my daughter and I are extremely close. Dads and daughters typically are closer than, moms and daughters. So, how did you push through that, and what helped, still carry this light that you got inside you?
Yeah. Um, I think this makes me emotional. I think because he was so amazing, it took a long time for people to start sharing stories, but once they started sharing the stories, that was just so cool. I had no idea. I was 17, right? I had no idea that he was so fun and like bursting with personality. And he was just a cool guy to be around. So I think that, and I think too, like we could sit and I talk about the free lunch ticket story all the time, not because I'm so pissed I had free lunch tickets, but that like it doesn't matter really where you come from if you have a nudge in a direction that can be good. I know some people that don't ever get the nudge, and thank God I did. And I think the nudge maybe for me was community, and then just going off to college and being wrapped up by an amazing group of women, girls we were then, and we still keep in touch. We're still together twice a year. Those college friends of mine, it's just crazy.
Well, you surrounded yourself with the right kind of people, which help, through the hard times. We always we know who the sorry, the noises. We always know who the people are when things are good. We know all of those clinger honors, but the people who stand by us when we're at our lowest, those are the people that we really want to hold on to. And you had a good support system, and kept in that the right tribe, to propel you forward.
Yeah.
What got you into entrepreneurship? Just seeing your dad do it?
No, I don't know. Like literally, I was in sales selling hair care and hair color with a distributor out of Minneapolis, covering 5 states. There's something very powerful without a cell phone. Those, it was pre-cell phone days. There's something very powerful about getting from point A to point B and finding where you need to be in the community. So I'm traveling with this massive map and, all these, whatever. That was really empowering. Like, okay, that was a really good experience because it didn't scare me. It made me go, oh my gosh, I can totally kick at this.
Yeah.
And then I actually went to a jewelry party and one of my old roommates, and the girl was having so much fun and the quality was great. And I'm like, tell me about this. And she said, there's no one in Iowa doing this. And I was like, I'm totally doing this. That jewelry company blessed our lives for 17 years. We just went straight to the top with it. And I think the coolest thing about that, Daryl, is that I was with a bunch of other people who had never had a sales meeting, never like recruited. We didn't, all of that. We weren't inviting people to have home shows of the day, but we were all learning at the same level. And we all just grew to this like amazing, our little own companies all across the US. It was just completely amazing. And I will tell you, when I had my stroke, I was 45. Was I 45? Yeah, I was 45 and I had a stroke in the bathroom of the Cheesecake Factory with Evie, then 11. Crazy story for another time. The women in my organization just like carried me. Like it was just unbelievable. The women just coming together and saying, okay, we're going to just leave this team without Angie because she has a brain injury and it's going to be a while. It's just amazing. Like amazing. We complain about how catty and bitchy women can be. And, of course, women can be catty and bitchy. Even at 87, I see my mom do stuff and I'm like, oh, dear Lord, you're acting like seventh grader.
Yeah.
But it's in times of need, it's pretty crazy what people can do.
Well, first off, I used to teach a small business entrepreneurship at the community college. So one of the things that make a successful entrepreneur in any endeavor is their work ethic. Because I see so many people want to get into entrepreneurship so they have time freedom. You know, it's usually not about the money. It's usually about the time and the flexibility of the time, because that's our bigger commodity. But what I find is that most of them forget that there's still a 4-letter word. And you and I both said before we came on here, we still swear. So we say, you know, shit and fuck once in a while. But the 4-letter word that's more offensive to most of these people is work. Like, you still got to go to work. And I used to teach,
Show up.
you know, if you showed up for an employer like you're showing up for yourself, you'd be fired.
Fired.
Part of what makes you and successful in your real estate company and successful in your entrepreneurship is that you go to work, but you don't go to work for the dollar. You go to work for your client. And that's what makes you unique and special. You show up with a giver's heart who wants to give the best service and experience to your client.
I'm that girl who tell me I can't do it, and I'll find you 5 ways I can.
Yeah.
I don't, we work with $1 million buyers. We work with $75,000 buyers, and I'll treat them all the same level of service. And I'll be honest, those lower price points who expect nothing or are looking for a unicorn because they're on a very limited budget. Yeah, I'll take those stories and those experiences any day. And I have a few that are just so fabulous.
Well, I see you excelling in real estate like you did with your jewelry company, and you and your husband are, you know, really rocking it. And you've been married to Sly for how long?
25 years.
Okay. Now, here's a testament to you. Those haven't always been easy 25 years.
Oh, my friend. Like, we were in marriage counseling at year 5, 10, and 15. And we started saying, gosh, this should probably be required of every marriage. Go every 5 years. And now working together, oh Lord, like, we have some great stand-up comedy, but we are cut from a different cloth. Both of us are so different. I think the experience for the client is unique because we both bring totally different things to the table, but it's not easy. And I'll tell you, I think the biggest struggle for me was I was the clueless, incompetent, it's like you're unconsciously incompetent. I had no idea what I didn't know. I grew that soap pot of business little at a time. It was fabulous. Blessed our socks off. I was primary breadwinner, blah, blah, blah. And then they closed their doors. And then it makes sense for me to join Tony. He'd been in real estate for 3 years. I'm like, okay, come aboard. Sales training totally makes sense. Well, having someone else that's a completely different personality style lead, I'm like, dude, if this was corporate America, I would have quit the first day because we are so different. And I never had anybody trying to manage me. And I'm like, I'm stunting your growth. You're stunting my growth. This is so completely crazy. We're finding our way. Oh, I lost you.
Whoops, sorry.
Okay, now I can hear you.
That's all right. The marriage part, you know, that in and of itself, that you've managed 25 years, Sly was a different man back early on than he is now. And, you know, that had to lead to some issues too, right?
It was so, I'm guessing that we're talking about his drinking days. Nothing's off limit for me. So he's been, sober for, I think 18 or 19 years. I think 19. And the interesting thing about that, I grew up in Alateen. My dad was sober 10 years when he died. And so we grew up in that program. And it is so, like, it is just mind blowing. I have such an addiction to sugar and food and eating shitty things. I've struggled with my weight my whole life. It's the only thing that I have not mastered that just pisses me off. And then all of a sudden for Tony just to say, yep, I'm done. We had an incident, something happened, and that was kind of the eye opener. And it's like, I'm done. I'm not risking losing my family. And he was just done. And I'm thinking, like, how can you just be done? Like, if I thought I could never eat ice cream or, it's like, I know you need food to live and you don't need alcohol to live, but he is so driven. So that's crazy, crazy, crazy. And yeah, he's sober for a whole long time. And in the craziness of it all, he never missed a day of work. It was almost, it would almost have happened earlier or been a little bit easier is not the word, but if he would have been so outward and a big asshole drunk, no one even knew he had a drinking problem.
Yeah.
Nobody. It's crazy.
Did it
And,
impact your kids?
I will tell you, this is what's so bizarre. I had said to one of my friends on the phone, I'm going to be off at a Silpata jewelry party some night, and Tony's going to be home with the kids. I mean, he would not care that I told you this because it's the reality. I mean, he would come home at work, never affected his work. But he would come home from work about 4 and drink 16 to 18 beers every night.
Wow.
So I'm off at these jewelry parties, and I just said to my friend on the phone, it's going to be just a disaster if something happens to one of the kids. God forbid they like fall and crack their head open, and he has to take them to the ER. He's going to be wasted, and that's going to be ugly. Like, I mean, there's a bunch of consequences for that. And I am not shitting you. A week later, I was home because a jewelry party canceled, and he was home. Evie was jumping on a bed down in our basement, cracked her head open. We needed to go to the emergency room. She got staples in her head. And I'm like, thank God he wasn't there by himself. I mean, it's like, oh, just the consequences that are, anyway, he's strong and amazing and driven, and he drives me crazy, and I love him like crazy. And some days I don't even like him,
Yeah, well,
but
marriage.
the reality.
I love my wife to death, but sometimes we don't like each other,
Yeah,
and we work through
exactly.
that, and we, move on and get back to, being the partnership that we are. Many people would have left a situation like that. What in you made you stay?
I was this close. I think because he just on a dime just said, okay, I'm done. This is what I want to do. I had gathered all the information and said, I love you, but I'm going to choose not to stay in this because I'm not raising my kids in this atmosphere. And I think we could have a really super amicable relationship and just be separate. And he's like, oh, hell no. I'm done. I'm not losing my family over 16, 18 beers every single night. And that guy has not had a drop of alcohol since.
Was it the
Crazy.
ultimatum that changed?
It was, and I felt really shitty that I was giving it. Because I wanted it, you can't make somebody do something, but I wanted it to be his decision. So I just gathered all the stuff, like, here's where the AA meetings are. Here's someone who would sponsor you. Here's inpatient treatment. Here's outpatient treatment. Here's what our insurance company said, what they'll pay for, what they want. He's like, I'm not doing any of that. Cold turkey, done. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Not a drop.
That in and of itself is his decision. He chose his family and a life over the alcohol. That is, you presented him his options. He made the decision.
Yeah, crazy.
And how long, jumping, and I'm glad that you guys are still together and doing well. And I know he's an amazing man. I met him and I admire him.
Thank you.
How long did it take you, jumping forward again to your stroke? How long did it take you to recover?
I was so lucky. It was a, I can't even remember the name of it. Ischemic right stroke, right side of my brain, maybe whatever. I did not have any immediate residual. I was in ICU for 3 days. I think a blood clot went through my heart, a hole in my heart and into my brain. And there was some evidence on the scans that I'd had something previous, and I knew I could tell you exactly when it was because we were at the cabin, and I had to sit down in the driveway. I'm like, I don't know, I feel weird, like I'm gonna whatever. Anyway, I feel like there's so many moments in my life where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's been 9 months since, and I always think, oh my gosh, from the time that you could like have a baby in your belly and birth a baby is like this catalyst time for me in a whole bunch of like areas of my life, careers, like, oh my gosh, 6 months or 9 months into real estate, I'm like, I think I could be good at this, 9 months into this, whatever. Well, 9 months after my stroke, I finally felt like I was going to be all right, only because I was so exhausted. When you have a brain injury like that, like I would just be sitting in a, class. I spoke at a national conference right after that, like literally within 2 weeks. And I went back and sat in the audience, and I was like, I'm falling asleep. I couldn't, it was awful. So 9 months. for me is when I felt physically like, okay, I think I'm gonna be able to have some energy again. It was weird.
Did you go through like physical therapy and all that, or you just did it on your
I
own?
did not. I didn't need it. The only thing that ooh, did I lose you for a second?
No, you flashed in and out. You're good.
Okay, cool. Some potential spam is calling me. Um, what was I starting to say? I'm sorry.
That's all right. I asked you if you did it on your own. Recover.
Oh, I did, and I didn't need all the extra stuff. I thought it was interesting that, when you have a brain injury, you go through all that. If I would never have had that stroke, I would never have known that I had a hole in my heart. So then I went through that procedure with having that heart hole closed, and that was $1 million in insurance. And I was a patient at the Mayo Clinic for years, and I'd go up there for neuro and then heart, and I'm like, Lord, I don't want to know all this crap. And then lungs, so now I know all the crap that's wrong with me. And I sort of wish I didn't, but I am managing.
But so basically it was you and your family that just got you through all this.
It was, and that my jewelry team of leaders, I'm telling you, like, it was so weird that literally the week that I had my stroke, it was in April 10 years ago. That week, the leadership team that I was working with in my business, we had planned like a 6 or 8 week call series once a week, and we were each taking a week. And I was supposed to start it off. And I remember just being so concerned about that in the ICU. I'm like, Tony, I'm supposed to do a call. Please call Marnie, tell her like I need help, find someone else to do it, whatever. They just did it. Like, I was just so out of it for so long. And I think just the beauty of people carrying you that you've carried for a bit yourself, just and allowing that, which is hard for, especially for women.
Well,
Well, and
that's
it's
you
probably hard
pouring
for
in.
dudes to ask for help too.
It's very hard for dudes to ask for help, but
Mhm.
that's you pouring into other people and putting those times in the bank. So now they can pour into you.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that the jewelry business is shut down, how many of those women are you still in contact with?
Um, I'm in contact. Well, thank God for Facebook. I'd love to keep up with those people. But I'm in touch with a whole ton of them and watching just, there's a whole bunch of people that got into real estate, which is fun. And then just watching the, companies come and go and these leaders joining other companies. And so I'm following a ton of them and their success. It's so fun to celebrate that even from a distance. But a lot. This is funny. I was just going through my phone, and I'm not telling you this because I think I'm cool, but I have like 460 friend requests on Facebook. I was just scrolling on Facebook one day on my phone. And I'm like, from like 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I'm like, why do I have all? Well, they were all Silpata people. And I didn't know how to probably even find how to say yes to a friend request back then because I'm not very techie. And B, I remember a couple of times thinking, I'm not going to be your friend just because we're in the same business. Like, I want like relationships. I don't want people like that I don't know. It's so weird. So weird.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but you're a relations builder, and that's what made you successful because, some people get into business for the dollar and some people get into business to do better for others. And
mhm,
those that do better for others have to build a relationship. It's
right.
it's a natural progression, right? So
Well, I am that person that thinks anyone, when I got into direct sales, my brother's like, this is so your gift. This is you. I'm like, no, I think anyone can do this. And my brother's like, not anyone can do this, Angie. It is about this and this and this. And I'm like, I think anyone, it's like, it was my goal. This, like, if the free lunch ticket, poor girl from Clear Lake, Iowa, could find success in direct sales pretty quickly, then I knew anybody could. You don't have to be some like superstar. It was like this equal employment opportunity.
so what's your one hit advice for anyone wanting to get into entrepreneurship to be their version of successful?
Follow your gut. Your
Oh,
gut will tell you everything.
yeah.
If it feels good and feels like a good risk, absolutely you should do it. Absolutely. And consistency. I think a lot of people will rely on past success and think that that just will determine their future success. And it's just absolutely not that way, in my opinion. Like, I mean, success leaves clues. We learned that, and from Gary Keller says that, from Keller Williams, who's the company we represent. So that's true, but you can't just rest after you've had some success. And
Yeah.
I think, like, bar none, consistency is the name of the game.
Yeah.
Absolutely the name of the game. Like, just show up and you'll at least learn something by osmosis, right?
Well, if you do, I mean, it is the little things that add up. People often think that they need to take these big leaps of activity or big leaps of something, but life in general, and entrepreneurship especially, that's a marathon game, not a sprint game. And you
Yeah,
have to
absolutely.
consistently make, it takes time to build relationships, and takes time to make people like, know, and trust you. And it takes time to show up daily. Like, if you just show up on Tuesdays because you feel like it, well, they might not be tuned in on Tuesday. They might be tuned in on Wednesday.
Absolutely.
I mean, whatever it is, you got to just show up. And the other mistake I think a lot of people make is that they think they need to be different for an audience of 1 than they do an audience of 100. Like, oh, when I have this big group or this big following, then I'm going to do this. Well, give your damn best to the first person who showed up, not the 100th person who showed up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would agree.
You like you said, we both are the type of people, we'll treat the janitor the same way we treat the president. We don't care.
Right.
You're a person first. Your wants and needs are person first, not job title first.
Well, and I think too, like, we'll treat them the same, but we're also willing to get the damn mop out
Yeah,
and mop up
right.
or sweep somebody's mess or whatever. Like, you got to get in the trenches with people, and they know you're willing to do whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
so weird though. Like, how do you teach that? I mean, that is like, if I could figure that out, we could be millionaires together. Like, what makes somebody like us the eternal optimist, and somebody like Tony Sly the eternal fun hater? The girls don't even get a sentence out of their mouth. They're like, Dad, we're thinking that we want to, and he'll be like, no. And they'll be like, Mom, what do you think? And I don't even hear what it is. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what makes, I mean, I know a lot of that's God given, but what makes someone?
It's not actually God given. It's experiential given, and what you were taught growing up. Because, okay, so I grew up in Clear Lake like you did. I had the opportunity right after high school to go to Florida to take a job in sales. Having grown up in a small town, I was a little scared leaving my small town. And, I asked my dad. Now, I'm glad I asked my dad and not my mom, because my mom would have been like Tony. My mom would have said no. But my dad said, never be afraid to pursue your dreams. Home will always be here. If you ever need, I'm only a phone call away. And if you ever truly need, you're only a plane ticket back. So go live your life and live your dreams, and never be afraid of wherever. So he gave me the freedom to live life and know that I still had home if I needed it. Now, if I asked my mom, she'd have been, hell no, there's people out there who are going to hurt you, and you don't want to do that. Like,
Protect.
Yeah, protect. And because she grew up in a negative environment, and that's all she knew. And my dad with my grandma grew up in a freeing, go explore your life and do your life environment. And so it was a different experience, and we can only build the house with the tools that we have. Now we can change the tools, but if you like, okay, I want to build this house. I need a 2x4, a nail, and a screwdriver. No, the screwdriver doesn't work. You need the 2x4, the nail, and a hammer, right? So
switch it out.
So switch it out, right? Many people don't want to switch it out. They want to stay with the tools they were given, then blame it on, that's just
and blame it on the tool.
Right. And this is just who I am. Well, you have the power to change, and you have the power to choose, and it's up to you to do that. So
Without a doubt.
Pivot.
My grandma Ida.
Yeah.
Keep going.
No, no, no. You go.
Like my grandma Ida used to say, what's the worst that can happen?
Yep.
You can always come back home.
My dad used to say it too. What's the worst that can
Mhm,
happen? You know,
mhm.
my
Our
my
Kylie, our firstborn, just got her Bachelor of Nursing degree, graduated last Friday. And she last June discovered this permanent jewelry company. And in following her mom's footsteps, which makes me so proud, she's the first representative in Iowa with this company. And she's doing this permanent jewelry, and it's beautiful and not inexpensive. And the kid just killed it. 6 months she needed to hire a bookkeeper and do her books and had to pay in a whole bunch of money for taxes and yada yada. And long story short, she called me probably 2 months ago and she's like, Mom, I'm graduating with a Bachelor of Nursing, and I want to do nursing, and I'm going to take my NCLEX and get my license and yada yada. But are you going to be super sad if I do jewelry full time and do like PRN nursing? And I'm like, did you forget who you're talking to? Like, jewelry blessed our lives beyond measure. We traveled the world. We took our kids. I'm like, I want you to do whatever makes you so excited to do it.
But see, that's what makes the difference in the environment. She has a parent who says, do you, whatever that makes you happy, not fit into this mold because this is the path you originally chose, right? My daughter's in the Navy, or she was in the Navy until last year. She got out and she's like, I don't know if I want to be a nurse or a welder. Well, those are very different. Let's explore both. Right?
Right on.
You're not saying one's wrong over the other. It's like, okay, you have two different interests. Let's explore.
So cool.
And if it doesn't work, then you just pivot off of it. Too many
What
people.
did she decide?
She hasn't yet,
All right.
but too many people hold on to a thing because they've invested time, energy, and money into it. Well, pivot off of it and something better will come along. Take the lessons you learned along the way and apply them to the next thing.
Right. You know what's so interesting? I've watched both of my girls who are both, Kylie now has her bachelor's. Evie is working on her bachelor's at the University of Tampa. And when you're that specific and you get into that and you decide this, I maybe don't want to, I mean, they did some on the job kind of stuff and some exploration, which was great. So they knew what they wanted to pursue. But I'm thinking, thank goodness that when I was in college, I got like just a general public relations, communications, and psychology. Right.
Yeah.
So I wasn't so specific. I'm like, these kids that get into the specific stuff, you just hope that they want to be that by the time it's done, because although, I'm giving Kylie my blessing, go do what you want. I'm also reminding her, you have a shit ton in student debt that you're responsible for paying half of. So, now that she's going to be off the payroll, she's thinking about who's offering what. There's a $20,000 sign-on bonus if you commit to a year here. There's a $5,000. I'm like, our youngest has always been into like, I don't want to spend money. I want to earn it. I want to get out of college with the least amount of debt. Kylie now, our firstborn, is like, I'm paying attention now because it's going to be my money I'm spending.
Yeah, it's always interesting because when you're grocery shopping with your parents, you just put everything in the bucket. But when you're doing it yourself, you're like, oh, well, maybe the generic brand isn't so bad, right?
Mm-hmm. You know what, Daryl? One of the coolest lessons, and I didn't even realize it, like what a big lesson it was, when the jewelry company I worked for closed their doors. It was like when you're in direct sales, your income is like all of a sudden gone, and it was a hefty income. And there's no severance, there's no anything. And so it came to a screeching halt, and we did some couple smart things with money and a whole bunch of really dumb ones, and we blew a whole bunch of money, and it was so fun. And I have no regrets, but Tony does. Anyway, my whole point in saying this was what? Lost it.
That's okay. You said
maybe that's my stroke residual.
You said the cool thing about, we were talking about generic buying and.
Oh yeah. So I would go to the grocery store. We had $150 a week was our budget. I would take a list and my calculator, and I'd be like, I felt so elementary, and it was so freaking cool to just humble myself in that moment of time and know our lives are a whole bunch different and we are in rebuild mode. And during that mode, the other coolest thing, the day that company announced they were closing, I'm not kidding you, my kids didn't ask for one penny, not even to pay to get into a football game at the visitors field. They babysat, they used their own money. They like that's cool.
Well, that's the other thing that makes people successful is remembering where you came from and allowing yourself to, even with the amount of success you've had, to be humble in the moment of whatever that is. You know, I've built 2 businesses, I've lost 2 businesses, I'm rebuilding a third with my coaching company. But I remember when I was homeless, living out of my car, selling blood for gas money. I never forget what it felt like to have to ask strangers to sleep on their couch, no matter how successful I am or not. And when you can stay humble, even in your success, it's going to breed more success.
And I'm guessing some of those moments are your favorites of your entire life.
Some, yeah, through our pain grows is our biggest growth. So yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, when you're in the middle of the crap, you don't say, "Hey, God, thanks for the crap," but you do. You're on,
I
say,
love my car. This is a
yeah,
great bed. Yeah.
yeah. Hey, these clothes make a great pillow. No, but later on you find the value in what was happening and you help, move it along. Um, I appreciate your time today and I'm sorry I have to cut this short, but I do have to run. As we wrap this up, what's one word of advice that you would give to anyone listening? And as a warrior in my tribe, what does a warrior spirit mean to you?
I would say my answer to both of those questions, and it's not one word, but I would say always be true to yourself. Because I think comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Do what is good for you and the culture of yourself, your professionalism, your family, your lover, your career, whatever it is. I think that we so often focus on everything else that's going on around us. And we think we have to jump on the next thing. And I think that just to sit for 5 seconds and say, does this fit the culture of me and my life and my family? And if the answer is no, it's no, period. It's not, it's no. No is a complete sentence. I heard somebody say recently.
Yeah.
And you got to be just true to who you are.
Yeah. And that makes you more authentic, which makes you more um, open to other people who appreciate the authenticity, because then they don't have to wonder, well, which version of Angie am I getting today? No,
Mhm.
you're getting the joy and the light that's there. So
You're so sweet. And if you don't know what your story is, ask someone to tell you your story. It's
oh
so much more fun to hear your story through the eyes of another.
yeah. Well, sometimes I find out how interesting I actually am.
Right on. Right on. And how lovely
Yeah.
and how loved.
And how loved. Yeah, that part is true. But Angie, it's been a blessing. I appreciate your time today. May you and Tony have immense success and give my love to your family.
And you do the same. And I'll see you in Clear Lake, I hope.
Perfect. Thank you.
Bye, my friend.